10 MLF wins, 60 top 10 finishes, 8-time MLF All-American qualifier. Roger Fitzpatrick has been a major tournament threat for decades. And today, this Lake of the Ozarks legend is here to share some of his knowledge and talk all about fall fishing at Lake of the Ozarks. Welcome to the Tackle HD podcast. Roger Fitzpatrick, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so are you down at Lake of the Ozarks right now? Is that home base?
Home base is Eldon, Missouri. I live just outside of Eldon, a couple miles. I actually live on Highway Y. Lake of the Ozarks is my home lake, but even more so, I'm really close to the Gravois Arm. Kaufman Beach is where I launch probably 90% of the time. So pretty familiar with that little stretch there.
Gotcha. So as somebody whose home lake is Lake of the Ozarks, when you get talking to somebody from, outside of the Midwest that's into fishing, how do you describe Lake of the Ozarks as a fishery?
Lake of the Ozarks, I've been fortunate to be able to fish a tremendous amount of lakes. And, Lake of the Ozarks is an exceptional fishery. You go to a lot of places and it's just hard to get a bite. But one of the things that happens on Lake of the Ozarks that all of us tournament anglers just are not fond of is the boat traffic in the summertime, the big giant boats, all the big docks and everything. But it's actually also what helps make this fishery so good. There's no tournaments on this lake in the summertime. There's a few little night tournaments and stuff like that. So the lake gets a tremendous break from basically Memorial Day through Labor Day, whereas other lakes just keep getting pounded every weekend after weekend after weekend. So, because of the lack of fishing pressure and all the boat traffic and all that stuff, I think it has a huge amount to do with how the fish population and how healthy it is year after year after year, and it just keeps getting better.
That's interesting that you say that. I honestly, as somebody who doesn't live down there, would think the opposite. Memorial Day to Labor Day, all those people down there, I would think fishing pressure would be high, but I guess those people are tubing and skiing and just partying.
They are. It's a recreational lake, and that's what they're doing now. Crappie fishing is still going on. The condo docks. It's one of the best crappie lakes you're going to find anywhere as well. It's just absolutely full of crappie. The technology we have with our electronics anymore allows you to see the fish and you can kind of differentiate what type of fish they are. And the amount of crappie in this lake is just insane. It's amazing. But yes, the people that come down, my brother used to own Fitz Fishing, still works there. And, through the summer, he's very busy, but they're selling mostly stuff for crappie guys. There's trolling crankbaits and stuff like that. The tournament stuff doesn't happen here in the summertime.
So on the topic of crappie, because Tackle HD does produce a handful of crappie baits, mm-hmm. What are the best months or the best, little stretches in your opinion for crappie fishing down at Lake of the Ozarks?
It just depends on how you want to catch them, Joe. The absolute best time that I think for crappie fishing, for the size especially, and the numbers too, Thanksgiving through Christmas.
Really?
Yeah, November.
When nobody wants to be, when most recreational fishermen aren't going to go down to Lake of the Ozarks.
November through Christmas, the fish, they may be over deep water, but they move up in the water column. They suspend on those docks, and they're only 2-3 foot down. A lot of times the lake gets a bit of a turnover that time of the year, and it kind of gets a little off colored pretty much all over. So the stain in the water makes them easier to catch. And Thanksgiving through Christmas, pretty much every year is, man, it's money. I love crappie fishing. Shoot the docks and stuff with the crappie jig, and it's a blast.
As far as, big fisheries in the state of Missouri, do you think Lake of the Ozarks is the best?
I personally do, especially for the 4 to 6 pound bass. The number that are brought in, if you look at the weights on the tournaments, and once again, we're talking about February through April, and we're talking about September through November pretty much. Mm-hmm. The weights consistently on this lake are better than any lake in the state. Table Rock has a lot of numbers. They have a lot of big Kentucky bass. They have some smallmouth, and some giant largemouth. But it would probably be a close second. We don't get to go to Bull Shoals very much, unfortunately. It's full of fish. I mean, same thing. The numbers down at Bull Shoals are tremendous. But for whatever reason, there's not a lot of big tournaments that go there. But it is a great fishery as well. And then you got Stockton, Truman, Pomme de Terre, and those lakes, which are all very good. But once again, if you look at the weights at these tournaments consistently every weekend, Lake of the Ozarks pretty much dominates.
How long have you been fishing Lake of the Ozarks? When did you start fishing down there?
We moved to this area from Jeff City. My wife got a promotion here in Eldon. We moved here probably 26 to 27 years ago. I actually fished it a few years before that, so probably 30 years I've been fishing Lake of the Ozarks pretty regularly.
In that 30-year span, what's the biggest largemouth bass you've caught out of that lake?
The biggest one in a tournament that I caught and weighed 860.
Okay.
And it was in the spring of the year, a super bass tournament years ago with a friend of mine, Bruce Geyer. We had won 2 of those events back to back, and I actually caught it on a little bitty jig. It was behind a boat dock, and I had to pull in the slip. I lifted him completely over the dock into the boat because we couldn't net it. He was back behind it, and dropped him right on my partner's feet. And he said, "That's a pretty big one." So yeah, I'll never forget that.
860, did that win big fish for you in that tournament?
You know, ironically, I don't think it did. I think there was a team from Jeff City that had ones just slightly bigger than that, and we won the tournament. We had a big sack, I think 23 pounds something, but I don't think it had big bass in that.
Wow.
In that tournament. In all the years that I've tournament fished, I don't recall a 9-pounder being weighed in. I've heard stories of 10-pounders being caught, but I haven't witnessed one in a tournament. Very early back in the 70s, I can maybe remember a 9-pounder here or there caught, but in recent years, I've not seen a 9-pounder.
What do you make of these guys down in Texas that are going down there? They've mastered live scope and they're pulling 12, 14, 15-pound bass out of there regularly.
Yeah, that would have to be just, I mean, that's just a different beast. That's a different beast. I mean, I don't get to go there very often. I've been to Toledo Bend. I've been to Texoma. Haven't been to Rayburn. And Lake Fork or none of those lakes. I look forward to maybe getting to do that sometime. But yes, that's just a different animal being. I mean, you're talking about fish that are twice the size of a real big one here. So I mean, that's tremendous.
What do you think is, right now, 2022, the largest largemouth bass in Lake of the Ozarks? I've asked a lot of the guys that have been on the same question.
There's no doubt a 10-pounder in here. I don't know about much more than that. Gosh, the big ones always get away, but I think I may have had a 10-pounder on a time or two. I had one break my hook years ago on a jig. I was pulling him to a rope on a dock, and I couldn't come any further because the rope was in the slip. And I had to let off of him, and rather than use my rod for leverage in the bend of the rod, I pointed it, when he took off, I pointed it right at him. And I thought he broke my line, but when I reeled it in, he broke my jig. And my co-angler was from out of state, and he thought too. That was the same year that I caught the 860, and we saw the fish really good, and I thought he was quite a bit bigger than that. But we'll never know. So the big ones get away. But I do believe there are 10-pounders in here, no doubt.
How many times day after day did you go back to that exact same spot trying to get another shot at him?
I fished it last weekend. I fished the same dock. I tell the story to my coes every time I get to that dock. It's right there.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, there's some big ones in here. Like I said, it's going to show out one of these days in the Big Bass Bash. Some guy's going to pull one in that's going to really raise some eyes, I think.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, as we are recording this, we're like a couple of days away from the October 2022 start of the Big Bass Bash down there. Um, Being that your level of professional fishing, are you not able to fish that type of event, or could you?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
They've kind of handcuffed a few of us anglers and keeping us away from that. It is a tremendous event. Tremendous event. It, brings a lot of revenue to the area. So hats off to the guys that put that together. But no, they've limited that to. There's, like I said, a handful of guys down here that and I understand why. I mean, it's not saying that I'm any better than anybody else, but somebody may, if we happen to win, they may not. I'm sorry about that. I had a
It's
call.
okay.
They may not want to get in, and their numbers have proven that they're doing something right. I mean, they get a tremendous following. So years ago, I was able to take my son when he was just a little bitty. I could take him out on the water and fish it, and my daughter as well. But now they're, like I said, I think Chase, my son, he's a senior in college. I think he's going to get to fish it Saturday.
Awesome.
So he's looking forward to that.
What weight you think wins it this time?
Been a lot of 6-pounders caught. A lot. I caught 2 of them last week practicing for this event. Over 6. There were several 6s caught in the event this weekend that I fished. I don't know that it'll take a 7. I'd say a 6.5 I would feel real comfortable if I caught one that size, unless a lot of weather would come in. If we get, the nastier the day, the better the big ones bite. But if it's sunny and no wind, it'd be hard to catch a big one. But if we get some wind makes a big difference. I think, like I said, if you had a 6.5, you'd feel pretty good about it.
I'm glad that you brought up the thing about wind, because as I was doing my research on you, I found an article you had done. I'm not even sure when it was from, but it was for anglersfishinginfo.com. And they did an interview with you. I guess, they just had you drill down on one topic. And the topic was the importance of wind in fishing. And you went into great detail explaining how if you want to find the fish, you need to find the wind on a lot of these days. I was just wondering if you could kind of expound on that and explain that theory, what to look for, and, maybe why, when you're not finding the wind, you're not going to find the fish as easily.
Yeah. I mean, I am just, I like to, tournament fish on the nastier days. I mean, your weights, especially the better sized fish, typically will bite unless you're fishing really deep. If you're fishing anything 10 foot and less, the wind just creates current. I mean, it's no different really than in June whenever we got high lake levels at Truman and stuff. When they run water through Bagnell Dam, it creates current, and man, the fish just bite. I can remember fishing a Charger Owners tournament in October, gosh, many, many years ago with a friend here in town. And I was fishing way up about the 80-mile marker, and we went to this row of docks that I knew that they were on. And when we got there that morning, it was just as slick as could be, no wind whatsoever. And we went through 5 or 6 docks, never had a bite. And I told Eddie, the guy that owned the boat, I said, dude, they're here. We'll come back later. And I guess it was about 1 o'clock. There was just a little chop on the water, and we went through there and we caught 2 or 3 on every dock. Just a little ripple this time of the year makes all the difference in the world. The tournament this weekend, the area I fished at on practice Friday, the wind blew hard. It blew really good, and it was kind of cloudy, and the fish bit. I mean, you still had to put the jig way up in the dock, the big ones. The 13 inches were on the corners, but those big ones were way up in what would be shade. They were still up where the cover was the tightest, but you have current moving under that dock constantly if there's wind motion. If it's calm and high pressure and no wind, I mean, they're so spooky. I was fishing fairly shallow, and you'd get up close to the dock and just crawl up there with your trolling motor and pitch in there, and you'd see the water boil before your jig hit the water. They just spook away, and it's just hard to catch big ones if the wind doesn't blow. The dirtier water, you can get by with it a little bit more, but in the clearer water, If you're fishing, you know, with no wind, it makes a big difference.
Let's talk a little bit about fall bite. That's a term that a lot of people will throw around this time of year. You know, as we're getting into early October, temperatures are finally starting to break. We're seeing days like today, high, mid 70s. Obviously, the water temperature is going to follow that down. Explain kind of, in layman's terms, what is actually happening when, fall bite kicks off. What are these fish doing now that the water temperature is changing, and how long can we expect that pattern to go?
In the fall of the year especially, and it's true in the spring, except for any time getting close to the spawn. The spawn is the only time food doesn't matter to the fish at all. But in the fall of the year, shad is key. Shad is king. Wherever the bait is where the food are, and especially a little later, like almost right now, the big bass bash. Find those gizzard shad, those big shad, and you'll find the big bass. You'll find a lot of the little schools of threadfin shad moving back in the coves. You'll see them on top of the water. There'll be giant schools of them, and there's a lot of fish around them. Those fish follow those shad back into the creeks. But when them gizzards move up close to the bank around those docks and on the rocks and stuff like that, when them gizzard shad move there, that's when those big bass make their move to the bank. And once again, lots of patterns in the fall, lots of patterns. I mean, you can fish, what I mentioned in the creeks, where if you may have some brush pile or a rock pile or even docks that are halfway, 3/4 of the way back, and those threadfin shad are moving back, they're going to hold up on those docks, on those brush piles or whatever. You can opt to fish 10, 20 foot deep if you want around those balls of shad, or getting to this time of the year, you can fish 2 foot deep if them gizzard shad will get on the bank. That's what I prefer to do, to try to catch a big one, and eventually, in a tournament, try to catch 5 big ones. That wasn't happening for me in the areas that I checked this weekend. They weren't there yet. But as it cools down, they're going to get there. It happens every year.
And that pattern will continue until, what do you think? Like temperature wise, anyway. Once we're into what?
Well, December.
Okay.
It'll stay there through December, and a lot of times the fish even stay there, even almost to Christmas. But a lot of times the presentation that you use changes. It may go from, from top water buzzbait, spook, whopper plopper to, as it cools down just a little bit, if the water's dirty enough, it may go to a spinner bait. And then it may, as the water gets a little colder, you may not even want to chase that, and you may have to go to flipping. A lot of times they'll stay right there. They won't move a bit, but you have to change the bait that you're throwing. I like to throw this time of the year something on top. It just catches the bigger fish. And like I said, a little later, you get into November and it cools down. Sometimes a spinner bait is the next bait, depending on water color. And then there are times I've seen where a jig is the best. So as it cools down, you can kind of slow down your presentation.
Very cool. Earlier in the show, you mentioned you thought that Thanksgiving to Christmas period was the best for crappie fishing at Lake of the Ozarks. What other little windows of time do you think for bass fishing? And it can be a couple of them.
Best fishing, I mean, if I had to pick, if I wanted to catch 5 of the biggest bass on the lake, it would have to be in April, especially probably late March.
Okay.
And especially if you got a little watercolor, it's those pre-spawn females. They move up and they have one job, and it's just to gorge whatever they can. I mean, they're eating. My favorite way to catch them then is on a slow roll and a spinner bait, a big spinner bait in some stained water. I've caught quite a few 20+ pound sack of fish late March, first week of April, on a jig and spinner bait, and it's pretty hard to catch over 20 pounds right now, even though I have done it. But everything's got to work right, and conditions got to be right. But I've caught some big sacks on a buzz bait, whopper plopper spook this time of the year. But if I had to pick one month, it would absolutely be late March, early April, pre-spawn. Once they get to the spawn, they get a belly ache, and it's probably my least favorite time to fish. I mean, you got 10 different rods laid out, and you don't ever know if you're doing the right thing. But
Right.
that pre-spawn period is a great time to catch some big ones.
Outside of, obviously you're a professional tournament angler. Are you involved in anything else, like on a professional basis?
Yeah, my day job is I work for Mondelez International, which is essentially Nabisco Cadbury. I've been with them, I think it's 26 years now. I'm in sales.
Really?
So, yeah, yep.
So like, so is that, are you like on the candy division or something else?
We don't do a whole lot with Cadbury at this point. We do some with the checkouts, some of their Cadbury stuff. I mean, it's Trident gum and it's all that stuff, but mainly it's Oreos, Ritz, Chips Ahoy, Wheat Thins, Triscuits. It's the snack items that we're in, and I'm in sales. And like I said, I've done it for a long, long time.
So you're popping into grocery stores, convenience stores, looking for shelf space.
Yep. Mostly grocery. I don't do convenience stores. It's the grocery stores. The area, my territory right now is the Lake area, Camdenton. I go to Jeff City. Pretty much nice little circle right here right now, and it's probably going to switch again in April. We've been talking about a restructure, I think, next April again, and it'll probably grow. It'll get bigger, but we'll see once I'm getting pretty close to hanging that hat up and maybe fishing a little more.
Do you think most of the guys that are on the tournament circuit, like you are at that high level, have day jobs and they're not just full-time fishermen?
I think a lot of them are. A lot of the guys that, I mean, at my level, I fish basically regionally. I don't fish nationally at this point because I have a full-time job.
Sure.
The ones that fish nationally, probably a lot of them do, but they own their business, they own their company, and they have people working for them, and they're still earning money while they're fishing. I am blessed with a lot of vacation time with my job. I get quite a bit of time off, and so I'm able to do it regionally at a pretty high level. I mean, I fish a lot of tournaments every year, and I fish surrounding states, and like I said, at this point, not traveling nationally. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of pressure off unless you get a really good corporate sponsor. I mean, if you had to rely on just a fish to put some dinner on the table, it would be that's a lot of pressure. But
that's the thing. I mean, a typical tournament, let's say it's 150 boats.
Mm-hmm.
How many are getting a check? Top 15, 20?
Yeah, 20 probably, somewhere in that neighborhood, 25. And those lower places aren't, you're getting your entry fee back for the most part. You're not paying your lodging, you're not paying your gas bill and stuff like that. So once again, I mean, I enjoy, and I have for years, doing this regionally. Haven't taken that plunge into chasing the national circuit. That may be coming yet if I can step away from this other job. But at this point, I really enjoy it. I was active in sports in high school. Played a lot of baseball, basketball, and my knees went bad. I've got 2 knee replacements, and of course I can't do that anymore. So this still is the competition. It's what drives me, and I love it. I mean, like I said, I've done it forever, ever. Great support from my family and wife. I mean, they just, they support me very well. So I've been pretty blessed to be able to do it and have a little bit of success at it.
What's still left on your calendar this year as far as tournaments?
This year, I am going to the Toyota Series Championship. I qualified for it at Truman Lake last week, 2 weeks ago. Barely slid in, 23rd place. They take top 25 in each division. So I'm looking forward to that. It's at Lake Guntersville in Alabama. I'll spend a week there. I am going to probably go to the Wild Card Regional in the BFL. This is the first year in 30 years of tournament fishing I didn't make the original regional. I have the 2 previous years, I had the 2 best years of my life fishing, and this is a humbling sport. This year I finished 74th and you have to take the top 50 go to the regional, And ironically, the regional was at Grand Lake, and the last time I was there, I won it, and I'm not even going to get to go. So for the guys that don't make a regional, they have a wild card regional in Major League Fishing, the BFLs, and wherever it's at, I will probably be attending. They'll announce it this Sunday where it's going to go. So God's got a plan, and maybe that's His plan for me this year. And years ago, it would have bothered me a lot, but it's just one of those things. I didn't make it. So, and I do have a Joe Bass Championship. I'll be fishing with my son in the middle of October. It's on Stockton Lake, and we've done it for 3 or 4 years now, and looking forward to that.
Fantastic. Well, Roger, is there anything you would like to plug, like places people can follow you online to follow along with your journey, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook, Roger Fitzpatrick Facebook page, and we also, my son and I, have a Facebook and Instagram page, Fitz2 Fishing, we're not on there tremendous amount, but we do like to support our sponsors and let them know we appreciate them. But no, I appreciate you having me on here and visiting with you.
Absolutely. And for anybody watching, if you're down in the Ozarks like Roger, look for these displays you see behind me. We've got them in like 120 Walmart locations from basically middle of Missouri down on through Arkansas. And it's got several Tackle HD products. You can get our signature high def craw, our Hellgramite in the 5-inch version, and also the 3.5-inch version, which is called the Nedmite. Great prices. These displays right here in Walmarts. So look for those. And if you're out there on a sales call in Walmart, just go on by and just clean it out. Straighten it up, paste it up for us, if you wouldn't mind.
You got it. You got it.
All right. Roger Fitzpatrick, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.